organisers of books and beverages, so I'm partly responsible. Hi, welcome to this debacle. And without further ado, let us start talking about victims. But this is a bit more fun because we thought we could ask sensible questions and all look terribly serious, but it's far too hot. And sitting behind us is my husband Jed, who's looking very innocent. But would you like to reveal, thank you, his secret weapon? So our authors here, they only have a minute to answer the question. And they can't see him because he's out of highlight.
We can hear him.
No, we know where he lives.
You know where he is, okay, fair enough. So if you think about it, the heart of any crime novel, it's about the victim, isn't it? You can't have a crime novel without a victim of one sort or another. And that's what we're going to talk about. And my panel today here is Patricia Sutcliffe.
Hello.
Hi. Ian Walker, who writes as Jon Mason.
Correct.
But if you go on Kindle to look for his books, just as an aside, there is a book called, was it Pampers and Pineapples? A UK Guide to the World of Swinging. And he
Not me.
He's not here.
I'm far too young.
I know. It's amazing what you find on Google. And last but by no means least is Angela Wren.
Hello.
Hi. And what I'd like you to do, just to introduce yourself to start with, and they are going to be allowed more than 1 minute, and just read a little bit about from one of your books, just to give a bit of flavour of the sort of books you write. Pat, please.
Okay. Hi. As already said, I've been allocated first. I'm Patricia Sutcliffe. I actually write a variety of books. The main genre that I actually write in now, through no fault of my own, it simply came to me, is ghostwriting. I've got 7 books now and 2 on the way. That just came to me. But the first book I ever wrote was Tormented, which is this one that I'll read a bit from. For some reason, police officers are attracted to me. So hence the ghostwriting and 7 of them. But anyway, I've written a couple of fiction, but I'm mainly non-fiction. The book I've just finished, in fact, and will be published soon, is all about metaphysical experience. So that's about near-death experience, OBEs, very into the spiritual realm. So you can see it's a real variety. So I can't sit here and say to you, oh, I write crime novels, because I wouldn't be telling you the truth. So I write a bit of everything. So I'm going to read you a bit of this. When I write this book, for example, it is not written about who's committed what crime, and it's not a novel where you're finding out who the killer is. I tell you on page 1. It's a psychological thriller, and the real story is the story about the person who's committing the murders and the relationship she has with the father. So that's where I'm going to read from. This is just one of the victims. Right. There was no time to waste. Angel was aware of how good her father was at his job. Time was running out for her, and her work was still incomplete. Tired, the day with her father had been challenging and long. Wouldn't be long before he made his links. No time to sleep, she needed to get ready. Different clothing was now needed. Her mother would understand. She grabbed a bag, popped brown contacts in, changed and left the building. The night was crisp, nippy. Her watch read 10 p.m. To get near the moon in time, the moon was above, she would need to hurry. Once it turned 11, her chance was gone. Too many people in the streets, potential witnesses she could do without. Recklessly, she hailed a taxi. Dropped me off at the top of Baker Street. The driver nodded and revved his engine. Angel kept her head down. She had deepened the colour of her lipstick. Her hair remained in bunches. The younger she looked, the more men she would attract. The bastards she came across every night always liked the young girls. She hated the hypocrisy. Stalwart citizens by day, praying cobras by night. Enraged by the praise heaped on them, false news. They were neither loyal nor good men as portrayed in papers. They did not differ from the pariahs who had attacked her mother, destroyed her family. Angel felt nothing but contempt, no compassion, no remorse. None was shown to her mother, and none would be shown to her victims. Drunks, parasites, scum of the earth, they made her bilious. A shiver ran down her spine, her stomach felt heavy. Tonight's kill would be her last. She wasn't as prepared and alert as she liked to be. It didn't matter. She must carry out her plans, avenge her mother. A mist descended, leaving a halo glowing around the illuminated lamppost. It was quiet, almost serene. Momentarily, she wanted to be back in the taxi and back on her way home. She felt dejected, alone, empty, in a race against her own father's intuition. She was distracted by a door opening on the street. She watched. A man stepped out behind. A woman. They embraced. She stepped back in. He turned and headed towards Angel, no doubt on his way back home to his wife, his lover satisfied. A piece of shit, nothing else. He looked smart, fit, smart, late 40s, she estimated. Black hair ruffled, she thought. He was shagging someone else's wife behind his instant partner's back. Maddening fury built up inside of her. As he got level with her, she gave him a wide smile. He smiled back. Walked past her. Annoyed, she dropped her bag. There was no time to mess. Stooping down, she stumbled forward. He turned back. Need help there? He smiled at her again. Thanking him for stopping, she smiled back. An inviting smile. Exactly as she wanted. Brown-eyed, wide and tempted. Richard Travis took it as an invitation. Angel Boyle meant it as one.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll have to go and get my glasses.
Oh dear, okay. You've got to get out now.
Want to turn if you want.
Sorry?
Want to turn if you want.
Do you want to go?
I can do it.
Right, Angela, would you mind introducing yourself for those who don't know you?
Okay, well, I'm Angela Wren, and I write the Jacques Foret mystery stories, which are set in the Cevennes in south central France. I also write short stories, often in the crime genre, but also in romance and fairy tales and various other genres. And some of my short stories appear in anthologies, which are all available on Amazon, and I work with 8 other authors to create one set of those stories and a different set of 8 authors to create the second set. And so there are 2 sets out already, and the third set of anthologies is about to be released in a matter of weeks. So I'm going to read for you from a little extract from Madame Bovary's Curio Shop. And this is set in the village of Beauregard, which is in central France, and it's 1983. There was something decidedly odd about Madame Bovary, Alice Tomlinson concluded, as she gazed out of the window of La Vieille Rue, the local bar and restaurant. Not least your name, nor its spelling, she muttered, as she ripped her croissant into 3 before devouring a chunk of the pastry. Wiping her fingers on the small serviette that Eric had delivered to the table, along with her meagre breakfast, she focused her attention on the activity across the road. Her wide coffee cup cradled in her hands, Alice watched as the sprightly octogenarian, was she really that old, moved bits and pieces of stock out onto the pavement. The lifting and shifting complete, Madame Bovary straightened her back and paused momentarily. And that's just what I mean, Alice whispered. That pose, there's something not quite right about it. Her head on one side, Alice observed Madame Bovary as she strode back into the shop. Exactly how old are you? She took another sip of her lukewarm coffee. Her glance shifted to the old-fashioned black-painted wooden shop frontage with the faded gold lettering above the substantial front window. Brocante de Bovary. Alice smiled as she recalled the sparkling blue and white stoned brooch that Madame Bovary always wore to secure one of the many silk scarves about her neck. She wondered which came first, the double BB of the jewellery or the name of the business. Another coffee, Alice, Eric called across the space as he reached for a fresh cup and saucer. Alice nodded, collected her empty breakfast crockery together and moved to the bar. Nothing ever changes here, does it, Eric? The pots were deposited on the counter with a rattle. Not really, he said over the whoosh of the coffee machine as it delivered another café au lait. Just like Madame Bovary, Alice said as she leaned back against the bar, her gaze firmly fixed on the large window and the view of the shop owner winding out the canvas awning to protect her goods from the sun. I've been here 2 months now, and Madame Bovary does exactly the same thing every day. Does she ever sell anything from that business of hers? Alice blinked away the assault on her sight of the almost neon green of Madame Bovary's top for the day, which neither matched nor complemented the lurid purple of her skirt. Alice turned to face Eric. She even wears the same sort of clothes. Oh, which she changes regularly, of course. Eric smiled. Perhaps her dress is a little eccentric, but Madame Bovary has been here a very long time, he said. Well, for as long as I can remember. Some say that she bought that place just after the war, with so many displaced people and things. I suppose she thought she could make a decent living back then. He slid the fresh coffee across the counter. Thanks, said Alice, adding some sugar and stirring. Yes, I can see why she might take on house clearances, buying and selling and so on. But it all looks very mundane, old-fashioned stuff to me. Have you been inside? Alice shook her head. What I do know is you can find anything in that place. He glanced at the light fittings on the walls around the recently decorated room. Alice followed his gaze. From Madame Bovary's brocante? She took a sip of her coffee. Eric nodded as he turned his attention to his washing up. Those two on the far wall, and her place was the only one that had them. Alice looked at each of the 4 sconces. Yes, she thought, they are a perfect match, and they look to be 1930s in style and design, and probably genuine. I might pay Madame Bovary a visit, she said, before taking a gulp of the sweet, milky drink.
Thank you. Ian. We'll drink your coffee, but perhaps not both at this second.
I'm a retired police officer. I retired from the police force after 29 years in 1993. I was born in the aftermath of I was one of the baby boomers, must have been one of the first. Lived in a terrace house in Huddersfield. My father eventually got back from being a dispatch rider in the Air Force into tailoring. My mother had worked on the front line in engineering. She worked at a firm called Hopkinson's, where she inspected valves for pipelines. During wartime, she examined wheels for battle tanks, and that's how she spent the war. Then I came along, put paid to that. I attended Panlash Training School, which was a mile and a half that way, and I was there until the December of 1965. I came out on the Friday. On the first 3 days of the following week, I had to attend a course on county bylaws. They weren't covered on the national curriculum. And on the Thursday morning, I found myself on Saddleworth Moor. Purely and simply because they had to supply somebody, and I had no experience, so I was supernumerary. So we went out to the moors. There were 24 police officers doing various things, usually digging. The sergeant took us to the bottom end of an open grave. And he just said, the sergeant said, stand here, breathing deeply through your nose. And that was the smell of what only way to put it is decomposing human flesh. We were then given 6 foot garden canes, and we spent the next 4 to 5 hours working around various patches of the moor in line, push the cane in as far as it would go, pull it out and sniff the end.
Oh, God. Do you want to tell us, Ian, how your experiences as a policeman, and a very young policeman at that time, and you've translated that, haven't you, into your detective series, which is very much set in the 60s.
Yes, there's no such thing as a wasted experience. So, So basically, 29 years, I was never in CID, but I worked with detectives and I worked across, well, basically everything from beat work. I was one of those nice road traffic officers, in body communications, computer system development, and spent my last 10 years at the posh end of Leeds in Holbeck. The last 4 years as a station sergeant. And I'd often thought, you should be able to write a book. But the trigger for my writing was actually reading 50 Shades of Grey.
No.
Now, no,
And swimming.
no. But nobody's ever read 50 Shades of Grey and said, wow, it's a wonderful story. A friend of mine said, well, the reason it was so popular is because women could download it onto a Kindle and read it on the beach without anybody knowing what they were reading. I hadn't thought about that. But so I have 3 incomplete manuscripts, and then I thought, well, why don't you write about what you know? And so the obvious thing was this. This is the photograph I took of Panlash Training School in 1965. Sent it to a firm in Leicester, and that's what they turned out, the Blooding of Brian Blake. And it's basically the 5 books that I've got in print are a saga. So this starts off with his first day as a police officer at Panlash, and I send him to Cleckheaton, which is where I went, or Wesley as I call it, and then each step through his, it's a journey really, it's all a journey, then is a separate book, and I've just got my 6th book in for editing, and as far as I'm concerned, I can't do any more until the editor tells me, oh yes you can. So, but yeah, it's using what you know, we all use people, or memories of people, we all use experiences, and basically it's just to incorporate them as best you can into some semblance of a story. So I'll start from from chapter 1. There is a prologue which I'm not going to read. If I'm being honest, my childhood came to an abrupt end the day my father was murdered. And now, following 23 years of life, bereavement, fear, love, nurture, nourishment, education, the day had finally arrived. 10th of June 1963. Within the hour, within the hour I was sworn as a police officer and following my father's footsteps. Along the way I had accumulated a stepfather, Joe, identical triplet stepsisters, a half-brother, a black belt in karate, a degree in exercise physiology and anatomy, and an attitude. Wakefield is a small city, administrative centre of the West Riding, Quarter Sessions Courthouse, maximum security prison, and the headquarters of the West Riding Police. Today was wet, umbrellas and vehicles vying for superiority. Progress was slow. Civic Museum and Town Hall on the left, police station on the right. I glanced to my left at the 4 massive Doric columns fronting the adjacent building adjacent to the Town Hall and spotted the notice board. This is the Quarter Sessions building on the left, Joe, I said, the wiper blade scything through the deluge. Next right, first left. Thanks, Brian, he said. I see it. 60 seconds later, we joined the short queue of private cars disgorging their cargo of would-be police officers. I had to report to the billiard room at the bottom end of the headquarters car park. Got everything, Joe said, as the rain relented. Can't say that. That triggered a laugh. I hope so. 1 letter, 1 briefcase, 2 holdalls, plus uniform to collect inside. We shook hands and hugged. Keep your nose clean and we'll see you at the weekend. As he let go, he slid several folded banknotes into my breast pocket and smiled. Don't say a word. See you Friday. It was pointless arguing. I stood and raised my hand, watching until my stepfather pulled his hand inside the car, disappeared between 2 large 3-storey red brick buildings. I hadn't been a violent child, but after my father was murdered, I was picked on at school by one of the older boys. Your dad wasn't much of a good cop, or was he, getting himself stabbed? Go on, cry, baby, cry. He said, prodded me hard in the chest. I thumped him twice on the nose. I went to see the headmaster. We moved to Huddersfield to Minigra and Westland. Joe taught me karate, helped me to deal with my fear and my anger. To understand that walking away from confrontation was not weakness, not defeat. I smiled, collected my luggage, a selection of butterflies, and walked into my future. It was busy. A snooker table was surrounded by about 2 dozen males in various stages of undress. Civilian clothes and police uniform. Everywhere piles of clothing. A hum of excitement. I gave my name and handed my letter of appointment to the civilian inside. He ran his thumb down the list. Strange, he said, looking at me. You're not here. That was a good start. But I've given you my letter telling me to report today. Just a sec. Sergeant Staunton. The uniformed sergeant excused himself from a conversation with a well-dressed elderly gentleman turned towards me. Just a minute, did you say Blake? Yes, Sergeant, I said. Brian Blake. It's all right, John, he said to the civilian. He's an addition, I'll deal with him. He turned to me, right, Blake, find somewhere to dump your stuff, then come back and see me. It's because of your degree, I was informed of my return. Once the chief had carried out your interview, he wanted you on the first available course. A vacancy occurred, so you were tagged on the end of this one. This, he indicated the pile of uniform on the bench behind him, on top of which was a pair of handcuffs and a truncheon, is yours. He handed me a foolscap envelope. Looks a lot, and it's all going with you. Go and get dressed and come back and bring this envelope. By the way, your service number is 547. You will find confirmation in the envelope. That startled me. 547, Sergeant. That was my father's service number, I replied. His smile was sympathetic. Oh, his smile was sympathetic. Yes, I know, you've got his staff and cuff as well. You'll find 547 stamped on both. You know the history, Sergeant? Yes, I do. Come back when you're dressed. That gave me a jolt. Perhaps I would have more assistance on the course than I thought. Before I could turn away, the elder gentleman chipped in. I couldn't help overhearing Mr. Blake. But when did you leave university? 10 days ago, sir. I held my interview with the chief constable last Monday. It might have been a clue, but I was measured for my uniform immediately afterwards. He smiled. Strike while the iron's hot. My sentiments entirely, sir. Well, good luck. He offered his hand. Perhaps we'll meet again. I look forward to it, sir.
Thank you. Well, just so they don't have to, relax too much, we've got a few questions for them. But reminders, ladies and gentlemen, you only have a minute. And sitting behind me, he must be a babe with his title. So, fortunately, he's not been allowed to take that home, otherwise life would be unfair.
Oh, God.
Absolutely not. They're not. So, I'd like to start, if I can start with Pat, because I'm looking at you. How do you decide, when you start writing a book, how do you decide on who's going to be a victim? Is that something easy, or do you struggle sometimes when you're trying to put something together?
Okay, I don't decide who's going to become a victim. The actual story decides it, and the story for some reason just flows. But in this case, the decision is made by the perpetrator, and because it's a psychological thriller, there are reasons why she's made those decisions, which become very evident as you go through the book. So it wasn't me sitting down and saying, okay, I want this type of person, this type of person. Every one of the people who are victims have different backstories, but what makes them a victim to Angel is the connection and the things that they do.
Yeah, thank you.
58 seconds.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Ian, would you like to say how you plan your
Anybody and everybody are potential victims, including your protagonist. The way I work through this one, you look for people who are potentially vulnerable. They're the ones who get killed. But there's there's no pattern, not the way I write anyway, and sometimes the victims present themselves, sometimes, if you're here for the last meeting, you find out that are pansters and there are planners. Planners plan, pansters fly by the seat of the pants. I'm a panster. So, and sometimes opportunities to present themselves, and it's up to you then to incorporate them into your scenario. And sometimes the characters take over. They present themselves as being normal, and then all of a sudden they will say something which is completely beyond your control, and you make them into a victim.
Oh, double alarm. Thank you. I think that bit one was meant to go off, but never mind.
Right, my victims are where I start. I build them as characters because they are characters and they often walk across the page, even though my books very often start with the dead body, but sometimes I go backwards. So my victims are very much characters within the story, and I build the story around them. And it's like building an onion. I find out who the connections are for that victim, how those connections link in with the community in which I've put the victim as a dead body, and then how that community fits in with the community of my investigation team, which is Jack Forey and his second in command Didier, and occasionally Thibaut Clerc.
Thank you. And also, gosh, aren't they being good? They're so spot on time. So, and in some ways you've sort of began to answer it, but it's quite interesting because Patricia, I know you start with being upfront about the murderer and then sort of reveal as you go along.
That's right.
So when you were sort of planning your book, because even if you fly by the seat of your pants, you've got to have something in your head, haven't you, to start with. Were the victims the sort of your first thought, or were you looking more at the perpetrator and her backstory?
The main story is not about the victims. So the main story is about the psychology and what's going on between Angel and her father and the death and the way that the mother dies. So that is the main story. That is what I was concentrating on. And the fact that as you saw in the part I read, that it's all about revenge, then the victims come I obviously did all this in a past life, so it was just there, it just reeled itself out. But seriously, you can call it writing by the seat of your pants or whatever, it really does just flow. Once I'm sat down, then that pops in, this pops in, and it just goes. But the main story, the victims and the murders are a byproduct of Tormented. So it really flows. It's the main story is not that. Just stopped. On time. Smack on time.
Oh dear. Ian, I mean, you write very differently, don't you?
Yeah, well, yes, because in The Bloody O'Brien Blake, Brian is quite often a victim. He's the protagonist, and that is his. When you're writing, the idea is to write as if you're taking a journey across a mountain range, not across a flat desert. So you've always got to introduce problems for the protagonist to overcome. So that makes him a natural victim. It's how he deals with that hopefully comes out. Well, he's still alive after 5 books, so he's not done too badly. But anybody can be there. But the problems are there for the protagonist to solve, especially as a policeman.
And when you're writing about your victims, and I know the bit you read from your book was very much, how you got the impression this was a pretty unpleasant character. But how do you think about them? How do you get the ideas across them? Are your victims ever sympathetic?
I like to use a lot of metaphors in my writing, which actually, and I do it purposely, and I do it so that it aligns with the reader and gets the sympathy of the reader, which is why, it might appear that he's a a nasty character. It doesn't necessarily mean that the guy is a nasty character. And in a sense of what you're saying, because of the way that I use certain things, you look at Angel and you think, my God, what a terrible, terrible woman. But the majority of readers by the end of the book feel so sorry for her that I get comments such as that poor, poor soul.
Yeah.
And that's the way I want it to go.
That's the skill of the writer, of course, but you wouldn't really want to meet her in real life.
You might have met her, you don't know. I might be sitting.
Yeah.
That's exactly what they appear to be.
Is all bad or all good. That just doesn't exist even in life, let alone fiction.
No.
I absolutely agree with you.
Thank you.
Don't blow him. He's
That's all
only.
right now.
Oh, you dare!
We like to share these things, you know. So, and now I've completely lost the plot, which is about half of the book.
Oh, bless you.
But again, we go back. This is why I have notes, because otherwise I can totally go get lost. So when you think about them, and I'm talking victims here, and I know your story is a very different take on things.
Yes, it is.
Do you create backstories for them, even if it's not, you know, part of what you actually end up writing? And Angela, would you like to comment on the backstories of your victims?
All my characters have backstories to a greater or lesser extent. You know, if they're only in one or two scenes, then the backstory is just, yeah, okay, that's who they are. Name, and yeah, okay, and they're that age. So yeah, they did live through that experience. And that's as far as it goes. Whereas my central characters, particularly my victims, especially my perpetrators, and obviously Jack, I know everything about Jack, right down to his Pierre Cardin underpants. So, you know, I know exactly what he's got in his wardrobe. So I don't go to that extent with my key characters, but it comes pretty close at times. So yes, they've all got backstory, and I know exactly what's up to them.
And is that useful when you come to actually write how they get bumped off?
Yes, it can be, because things have to be interrelated in order to, you know, get the victim in the right place at the right time, seemingly just by happenstance rather than by planning or design. So it's quite a delicate balance to tread, I find.
Just as we're getting into full flow then. Oh, please do. I'll tell him not to squat.
Just if obviously you know every detail of your main character, if you will, do you write it down, record it, or is it all in your head?
Well, it's all in my head anyway, but I've now got, because I'm on book 7, I've now got such a vast array of characters, and some of them do keep on coming back. I have a database, so everything in Jackabout there is in the database, along with Didier and Thibault, along with the villagers, you know, Femi Roussel, and all the dead bodies, their characters are all in there too. You know, I mean, on Neighbours they can bring dead bodies back, maybe I can. You know, who knows? But it's all there, yes, it's all there.
Can I ask something? So, apart from, if you write backstories for characters, be they, you know, the villain or the victim, do they remain static in that time?
No.
Because, you know, if you think of the old stereotypes in Agatha Christie novels, which I started off with, you know, the victim was always a goodie, and the person who solved the crime was always the baddie. And there wasn't really any character development to move any of those stereotypes either way into the nuances and the grey zones. So how would you move your character from the backstory into some development?
By putting them in various circumstances, and I spend an awful lot of time asking myself questions. How would they do this? How would they do that? How would they react in this particular scenario? And I take Pierre. In the first book, he's 5 years old. He just has his 5th birthday in the first few pages. And he's now still in book 7, and he's a teenager. And yeah, and he's at the grunt stage, really. ignores his parents, does his own thing. And it's just about observation, I think. I am an actor. I've been working on stage since I was 6 years old. So observing people and how they react and how their mannerisms, etc., has fed into my characters that I played on stage since then. And it still feeds into my characters that I put on the page. And in fact, the process that I always went through as an actor to get a character on stage is the same process that I use now to put them on the page.
So there's a real building of your victims, and that's how you do it. Is that the same for you, Ian?
No. To take Pan Lash, it was male officers only, but all the catering and all domestic staff were female. And a lot of these fellas were anything up to 150 miles away from home, some married, didn't make any difference, some single. And it was like, I wasn't going to say like a game of, like...
Musical beds.
Not quite, well, no, not on the premises. Well,
Right.
no, you slept in dormitories. So that was, in fact, I put this fella in the same bed that I slept in 2 years later. But it was almost like watching a caller in a bingo game where you got the balls all floating around and you don't know which ball's going to come down next. And the idea, you introduce circumstances whereby you come across a scene by accident, and basically it's just a salacious encounter, and then one party ends up dead. But who was the person she was talking to in this salacious encounter? And it's trying to work out how am I going to deal with this. Some present themselves. They've all got history, basically, that story. But it's how...
You've been squirted.
Been squirted.
You've been booted.
Can I just answer on that
Yeah, please,
question?
I was going to come
Thank
to
you.
you.
Yeah, no, that's great.
You
Thank
have a minute.
I know. It's a dichotomy, really, because when you talk about a victim having a backstory, the victim is the victim's dead. The backstory comes from what other people are saying in most cases, and the dichotomy is the way that someone who commits a murder looks and sees the victim, and the way that the person in the background who knows the victim, the wife, the spouse, the girlfriend, actually views the victim. And that's where you get the backstory, and that's where you can match up the backstory for who's the victim, who's not the victim. So it's an interesting dichotomy, and that's how I see it, how I use it.
Yeah. And of course you've got to take the reader with you.
Absolutely.
You know, page one knows nothing of this story, isn't it?
Absolutely, you've got to screw all the mind up.
Yeah. So, and this is a question from Pat, which could be something to do with her book. Can a murderer ever be a victim?
Of course.
And it's, yeah, you smack on. And it's an excellent question, because a lot of people tend to think, okay, you know, this is a nasty person, this person murders, this is a lovely person, they've just been killed for some reason. Well, nobody's killed for no reason, are they? But the truth is, as you read through this, you realise, and again it comes back to the psychology of the character, you realise there is a real, genuine reason, and there's a lot of mental illness that threads in between people who commit certain crimes. And you start to look at Angel, and the name itself portrays one type of person, as opposed to the fact that she's actually going along and murdering people, and the way she's doing it. But as you're reading through, you do recognise, my God, I can see exactly where in her mental state she's doing these things, even if she was sane, she may not do these things, so she's that absolutely a pain. Thank you for that last comment.
It's all right. And how do you, when you're writing them, you're planning, or they're bouncing around in your text, how do you feel about your victims? Are they sympathetic characters, who didn't deserve their horrible grisly fate at all? Or actually did they thoroughly deserve to be bumped off? Ian, would you like to?
Sometimes they're totally innocent. They just happen to be in the wrong place at the right time. and they're the ones whereby you get the greatest empathy with. On the other hand, you suddenly find that the victim isn't all they made out to be. Sometimes the victim can be a murderer. In fact, that's quite often the best way of dealing with it. But it's how and what like in here, I mix a brand new police recruit with no active police service with MI5. Now that's a recipe for disaster, and everybody says it's a nice disaster, but yeah, it depends. Sometimes it leads itself into where you want it to go.
It's loud. Angela, can I ask? And don't make him a victim. He doesn't really deserve that. You're an expert. But do you find that your victims are sympathetic characters, or sometimes they get what they deserve?
It varies, and it varies to the extent of what the story is. So it's basically about the plot. I mean, the victim, one of the victims in the first book, she so seriously deserved to be killed. And she is. I'm not going to tell you why. I'm not going to tell you why, because that will ruin the whole story of the book. But in the book that I'm currently writing, it is questionable whether the victim really did deserve to die. But then again, the perpetrator is somebody who is driven to such a point of stress, and not so much desperation, but absolute stress, that he comes across the victim and
we'll never know the answer to that one, will we?
He does something and that's it.
You really enjoy having your whistle, don't you?
I'm glad you've realised there's a power struggle going on.
No, there's no struggle. He's got the hooter.
Sometimes
Yeah,
it'd
got
be
the
nice
power.
to hear them expand on the answers.
No, but that's the fun of it, because and we are coming to the end of our session. But just with the last question that I want to ask, and you can let them have a bit more time.
I can do it.
All right.
63 seconds.
If you were to be the victim, not a nice thought to end on, how would you like to be bumped off? Pat, you're looking at...
I think he's thinking already, how should she be bumped off? Right, the short, sweet answer, I'd like to be bumped off very quickly without any pain. Full stop.
Bullet to the back of the head, I fancy.
Absolutely, and I never saw them coming. I'm with you.
Shot by a jealous husband when I'm 102.
Lovely.
Perhaps she has been writing that swingers book.
Yeah.
Oh, that goes back a long way, doesn't it?
Well, for the record, I really would not like to be a victim. The second thing is that I am a total and utter wimp. So when it comes to blood and guts and pain, I just don't want to know anything about it. So if I was bumped off, they would have to do it extremely quickly. I wouldn't need to see them or even know who or where they were, and it would have to be instantaneous.
In wine with some nice cheese. In the sun.
It would just have to be instantaneous, and then I'll be happy.
No, you won't.
You'd be very
Won't be
dead.
unhappy either.
Thank you. Over to you. Do you have any questions for our panel about writing about victims and creating...
You're putting forward an idea that victims could be that it's okay to kill people. And that's something that's come across, that your victims may not be blameless. But then I think that's a very moral question. And I'm very concerned about your angel. Because that's what she's doing, isn't she? She's just judgment about people's rights to live.
That's what all murderers do, isn't it?
Exactly.
Essentially, they put themselves in
Exactly.
the position of judge and
I
executioner.
think that there are very few intentional murders and an awful lot of accidental deaths.
Yeah, I agree with you. If you look at some stats, and I was looking at these a few months ago and I can't recall them now, but the vast majority of murders are not planned, premeditated. Premeditated murders and serial killers represent something like, was it less than 1%? Was that the figure we were given? Represents less than 1% of all murders. The vast majority of murders are accidental. It's somebody, a couple of people in a particular situation, and the worst happens.
Loss of control.
Yeah, the worst happens, and that's the general. Yeah, not
Of course,
usually.
if you're writing, you can use your imagination, you can do whatever you like, because you don't have to be, fortunately for most of us,
Yeah,
it doesn't have to be real life. It has to be believable,
that's right.
but you can make your characters do all sorts of terrible things. Thank you.
I was
Yes.
going to ask, with Brian Blake, is he the fully kind of the very moral detective, like similar to sort of Edward Woodward in The Wicker Man, or Dostoevsky's The Idiot, or is he morally ambiguous himself?
He's human.
He's human. Yeah.
He's human.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, although, you know,
But he's
everybody.
a good man, though.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But,
He's not a hypocrite in any way.
but
like some of those.
that's why I gave
some
him.
of them
I
can.
gave him a degree in. Not the degree, but why he's a black belt at karate,
Yes.
so
yeah.
he can defend himself.
Indeed.
But you can't defend yourself against a bullet. No matter how quick you are, bullets are faster.
Yeah, that's interesting. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I'm thinking.
You're thinking, well, can I say,
I was just going to say, can I announce about the 5 o'clock?
of course you can.
Where, if any of you are going to be running around town, and there's an ice cream truck 2 blocks away, opposite the train station, and you're back here at 5, we're going to be using a lot of what we talked about today to plot a crime in real life with the audience and create a story out of it eventually and post it. So if you're around at 5 o'clock, come help us plot a crime.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. And can I thank our panel as well?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.